Hi, this is iPad Basic 101. We're going to go through some of the basics in now once you have your iPad, what do you do? So the first thing we want to talk about is that the iPads were introduced in 2010, just 3 years ago, if you can believe it. And since that time, they are now outperforming the sales of MacBooks by a margin of 2 to 1. The one thing that the overall philosophy or thing you want to think about when using iPads is the purpose is not to just deliver and drill content, but instead we're looking to empower students to create, investigate, and innovate. So having said that, we want to think of iPads within the framework of our educational objectives, which is preparing the kids to be members of a global society. The pros of an iPad are they're versatile, they're mobile, and easy to use. This is anytime, anywhere learning. So how do these compare to computers? One of the main features is it operates on touch. There's no mouse involved with an iPad. Neither are there any drives or USB ports. The focus is only on one app at a time. So you only have the ability to open one app on your screen at a time. So let's now talk about getting to know your iPad. So when you take a look at the iPad, down here at the bottom, if you're holding it vertically, is an indentation where the arrow is of a round button. That's called our home key. When it's dark, when the screen is dark, it's either asleep or off. To turn it on when it has been fully turned off, you press the button at the top right of the iPad when holding it vertically. So there is a button up here which you would turn to turn it on. When it's in sleep mode, all you have to do is press the home key and it wakes it up. So when we look at it, let's take a look at the different views. So as you're facing it, or a front-facing view, you'll see in the center there is a tiny hole. That's the camera. You'll see what we call the status bar. And what the status bar does is it usually gives the time and the date, and it tells you how much battery you have left on your iPad. You'll have a picture. The screen is filled of little square icons, which are your app icons. Again, you see the home button at the very bottom. So again, this is your front-facing camera, your status bar, your home key. If you flip it over, let's look at the different things we see. Up at the top in the left, you're going to see the sleep awake black rectangular button. You hold that down and that's how you wake it up. You'll also see a round hole, which is the rear-facing camera. So these are our iPad 2s and above. You have a front camera and a back camera. You have a little switch here that moves up and down called the side switch, and then a volume toggle, which again goes up and down. We're looking at a headset jack at the top that's used to put headsets in if you want to not have the volume or have the sound be interfering with others. So those are the buttons on both sides. So let's talk about for a minute, let's focus in on the volume button and the side switch. You'll find that on the iPad, one button can have many different purposes. So the side switch button, which goes up and down, it disables audio alerts and notifications. So it reminds me of the button I turn on my iPhone when I'm in the movies to turn off all the alerts. So if you flip it, if you slide it up, you'll see, or slide it down, you'll see a red dot, and that means you've disabled these sounds and alerts. The volume is, like I said, the elongated black toggle up and down. You can adjust the volume. You can also mute the sound by pressing and holding the bottom end of the volume button. If in fact you want to set a volume limit, make it higher, make it lower, you would do that through your settings. That's an icon on the front of the iPad that looks like a gear, similar to what you might see on a phone. And you go to Settings, Music, Volume Limit. and that's how you can control the volume. When you want to lock the screen rotation, again, another time you would go to that gear settings, go to general, and then to use the side switch 2, in that case you would tap lock rotation. This means that you would be locking your iPad, the view of your iPad, either in a vertical or a portrait or landscape fashion. So moving on, a few more buttons. Up at the top, as we mentioned earlier, is your sleep wake button. You can lock the iPad by putting it to sleep when you're not using it. When you lock it, nothing happens if you touch the screen, but you could continue to play music. So by locking it, you press and hold the sleep wake button. To unlock it, you simply press the home button or the sleep wake button again, and then a slider will appear and you would drag that slider across to power on. To turn it off, you hold the button down for a few seconds until you see the red slider appear. When that appears, you slide to power off. To turn it back on, you hold the sleep wake button until you see the Apple logo appear, and then you power on again. You are allowed to set an auto lock time, and you can do that again through the settings. And you're allowed to set a passcode. So if you have an iPad that's in your room and out, and you don't want the students to be able to go in and pick it up and start looking through your things, you can set a passcode so that you'll know when they're using it or not using it. And again, you would find that in the gear, settings gear, going to general and going to passcode lock. So the neat thing about the iPad you either tap, double tap, swipe, or pinch. So all the magic happens in your fingers. So if you're opening and switching between apps, you simply go to your home screen. And to open an app, you're just going to tap on it and it opens. So one finger tap and a one finger, one tap, and your app will open. To return to the home screen, you just press the home button again. Multitask gesturing. This is kind of a quick and easy thing to do. So you can return to the home screen from any screen you're on in your iPad. You can return to the home screen by simply taking 4 or 5 fingers and pinching them together quickly. That will take you right back to the home screen. To look at the multitasking bar, that's this bar here on the bottom that will list the apps that you currently have open. To reveal that, you simply, from the screen you're on, swipe up with 4 or 5 fingers, and you will immediately see all the apps that are open. To switch apps or go from page to page, you just swipe with a finger from right to left. To turn the multitasking gestures off, if you find that the students are playing with it or you just don't feel comfortable with it, again, you can go to your settings, general, and go to multitasking and simply turn it off. We talked about this briefly before, that you can have 2 views on your iPad, either the portrait view or the landscape orientation. And your screen will just rotate to whatever that is by turning it. If you want to lock it to always show in one view or the other, you again do that through settings. Scrolling, to drag up or down on a page or on a web page, all you have to do is scroll up or down with your finger, a tap of your finger. To do it more quickly, you just flick it, and you'll find that it goes from page to page. So if you've opened an article, let's say on a web page that you're trying to read, you simply can flip up or flip down. to go from one page to the other. Zooming in or zooming out. Again, a fairly intuitive thing. Depending on the app, when you zoom into a large or enlarge or reduce the image on the page, you do this with either pinching or taking your fingers and pulling them out. You pinch 2 fingers together to zoom out or spread them apart to zoom in. On photos and web pages, you can also double tap quickly and it zooms in, and then double tap again to zoom out. So that goes with some basics on how you use your fingers, your taps, your buttons, your flicks on navigating around the iPad. So I would take some time and play and practice this. When you're comfortable, you want to move on to Basic 102. Thanks.